Introduction: The Art and Science of Feel-Good Productivity. For far too long, productivity has been framed as a battle against time, an endless grind fueled by stress, exhaustion, and guilt. Society often glorifies the hustle, pushing harder, working longer, and sacrificing rest, all in the name of getting more done. But that model comes at a steep cost: burnout, frustration, and a deep disconnect between what is done and how one feels. What if productivity didn't have to be a draining struggle? What if it could be a source of energy, fulfillment, and even joy? Feel Good Productivity introduces a revolutionary approach that combines both the art and science of how work, thought, and life flow together. It challenges the old narrative that productivity requires sacrifice and replaces it with a model built around balance, purpose, and human nature. This kind of productivity isn't about squeezing more out of oneself. It's about working in harmony with the body, mind, and values so that productivity feels good and lasts long. At the heart of feel good productivity is the understanding that true effectiveness springs from alignment between tasks and deeper purpose, alignment between energy and workload, and alignment between emotions and actions. When these elements work in concert, productivity becomes less about pressure and more about flow. This approach marries the art of self awareness, intuition, and creativity with the science of psychology, neuroscience, and physiology. The art lies in learning to listen to internal signals, knowing when to push forward, when to pause, and when to play. It's about cultivating joy, curiosity, and resilience in daily work. The science provides insights into how the brain focuses, how fear and uncertainty block action, and how rest and social connection restore energy. Together, art and science form a practical, holistic framework that helps one tap into natural energy cycles instead of fighting them, break through hidden psychological barriers that cause procrastination, build sustainable habits that protect against burnout, connect daily tasks to a larger sense of purpose and meaning. Feel good productivity is not a quick fix hack or a rigid formula. It's a mindset and a way of being that honors full humanity. It acknowledges that a person is not a machine, but a living, breathing individual with needs, dreams, and limits. Productivity then becomes an act of self care as much as achievement. Within this framework, tools and strategies focus on the energize, unblock, and sustain pillars, each crucial to unlocking the best work. The process infuses work with playful creativity and authentic connection, overcomes fear and confusion that stall progress, and maintains vitality and focus over the long term. Whether overwhelmed by endless demands, stuck in cycles of procrastination, or simply seeking a more joyful and effective way to work, Feel Good Productivity offers a transformative path forward. It invites reclaiming time, energy, and satisfaction, not by doing more, but by doing what truly matters in a way that feels good. This is a new paradigm where success is measured not only by accomplishments, but by how one feels along the way. It's about thriving, not just surviving. It's about crafting a life where productivity and well-being coexist, fueling each other in a virtuous cycle. Welcome to the art and science of feel-good productivity. Here begins the journey to work smarter, live fuller, and feel better every step of the way. Part 1, Energize, Chapter 1, Play. For most of my life, I believed productivity was all about structure, discipline, and consistency. I thought that if I wanted to get more done, I had to push myself harder, remove all distractions, and eliminate anything that didn't feel serious. Joy, fun, and play, those belonged to weekends or childhood. Work, I assumed, was supposed to be dry. But as I advanced in my career, first as a medical student, then as a junior doctor, and eventually as a content creator, I started to notice something strange. The moments when I felt most alive, most focused, and most productive didn't come from following rigid routines or grinding through to-do lists. They came when I was having fun. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I began to see a pattern. The times I was doing my best work were the times I was most engaged, curious, and playful. Whether I was filming YouTube videos, designing thumbnails, writing, or even experimenting with a new productivity tool, I noticed how much more I got done when I felt like I was playing, not working. I wasn't just checking boxes. I was exploring, tinkering, and following what felt good. Play isn't something we're taught to value in adulthood. It's seen as childish, unproductive, even wasteful. But science tells a different story. Research in positive psychology shows that when we're in a playful state, our brains become more open and creative. We make better decisions, connect ideas more easily, and solve problems faster. Play activates the same neural pathways as curiosity and joy, both powerful motivators. And when you combine playfulness with purpose, the results are often far greater than anything achieved by forcing yourself to power through misery. I didn't arrive at this understanding overnight. In fact, it took burnout to bring me here. I had filled my calendar with tasks, routines, and endless goals. On paper, I was achieving a lot, but inside, I felt numb. So I started asking myself different questions. What if I didn't need to suffer to be successful? What if enjoyment wasn't a distraction from productivity, but the fuel for it? What if play could be a strategy? The more I leaned into this idea, the more it worked. I began reframing work as play. When writing a video script, instead of thinking, I have to write 1,500 words today, I'd think, let's see how weird or fun I can make this idea. When editing a podcast, I'd challenge myself to make the intro feel like a movie trailer. I even experimented with making my to-do list look more like a game scoreboard. These changes sound small, but they had a huge impact on my motivation. I was showing up more consistently, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I also realized how deeply we associate productivity with suffering. We've all absorbed the message that if something feels hard, it must be worthwhile, and if it feels good, it probably isn't. But that's simply not true. Some of the most meaningful, high impact work I've done came from moments of joy, not struggle. The most creative projects weren't born from late night grinding, but from spontaneous ideas I was excited to play with. Of course, play doesn't mean being silly all the time or avoiding responsibility. It means approaching work with a sense of curiosity, lightness, and flexibility. It means giving yourself permission to try things out, make mistakes, and enjoy the process, even if the outcome isn't perfect. When we're in a playful mindset, we stop obsessing over productivity metrics and start focusing on what feels energizing and engaging. And ironically, that's when we often become the most productive. I started paying attention to how often children learn through play. They experiment, fail, try again, and build resilience, not because someone told them to, but because they're naturally drawn to exploration. Somewhere along the way, most of us lose that instinct. We trade exploration for expectation. But the truth is, we never lose the need for play. We just convince ourselves we've outgrown it. One of the best tools I discovered during this shift was gamification, turning everyday tasks into small challenges or competitions. I'd give myself a point for every deep work session I completed or set a timer and see if I could finish a video outline before it ran out. These little tweaks made even mundane tasks feel engaging. Suddenly, writing emails wasn't just admin. It was a time challenge to see how quickly I could reach inbox zero. Over time, this playfulness became part of my routine. I also started building what I call play prompts into my workflow. These are small nudges that remind me to make tasks more enjoyable. It could be as simple as working from a cafe for a change of environment, designing a beautiful workspace, or listening to music that makes me feel alive. One of my favorite examples is setting a rule that I can only use my favorite pen for tasks I usually avoid. It sounds ridiculous, but it works. There's something powerful about reconnecting with what makes us feel good. When we allow ourselves to experience joy in our work, we stop resisting it. We start looking forward to it. And that shift from resistance to anticipation is the key to building lasting habits. You don't need to force yourself to do something you enjoy. You just need to remove the guilt and let enjoyment be part of the plan. Play also helped me overcome perfectionism. When you're in a playful state, you're not worried about getting everything right. You're more willing to try things, take risks, and accept that failure is part of the process. That mindset freed me from a lot of the pressure I had put on myself. It made room for experimentation, which is where all the good stuff lives: innovation, creativity, growth. Even in moments when I felt low or uninspired, tapping into play reminded me that I didn't need to fix everything at once. I just needed to make the next task a little lighter, a little more fun. That was often enough to get me moving again. And once I started moving, momentum built naturally. Productivity without joy is empty, but when we bring play into the equation, everything changes. We stop living for the end result and start enjoying the process itself. That's what energized productivity is all about. Not doing more for the sake of it, but doing what matters in a way that feels good. Play isn't a distraction, it's a return to something essential. It's not about being childish, it's about being fully alive. And that's when our best work happens. Chapter 2: Power. For a long time, I treated productivity like a purely mental pursuit. I optimized calendars, built to do lists, created tracking systems, and obsessed over techniques like time blocking and deep work. I thought that if I could just get my mind in the right place, if I had the discipline and the right mindset, I could do anything. But there was something I kept ignoring. No matter how perfectly I structured my day, if I woke up feeling drained, foggy, or exhausted, everything fell apart. That's when I realized the missing piece: energy. Not emotional energy, not mental motivation. I'm talking about physical power, the kind that fuels every thought, decision, and action. The truth is, all productivity starts with energy. Without it, even the best productivity hacks are useless. I began to understand that the way I treat my body directly affects how I perform mentally. And so I started shifting my attention toward what gives me energy and what drains it. I started looking at my body not just as something that carries my brain around, but as a central part of how I work, create, and show up. One of the first areas I looked at was sleep. I had always known sleep was important, but I treated it like a luxury I could cut back on. During med school and night shifts as a doctor, I was used to functioning on very little sleep, but functioning is not the same as thriving. I began reading the science, and it became clear sleep isn't optional, it's foundational. When I started prioritizing high quality sleep, 7 to 9 hours of real uninterrupted rest, my energy levels transformed. I woke up clearer. I had more willpower. I made better decisions. It was like upgrading the operating system on my brain. But sleep was just the beginning. I turned to exercise next, not for aesthetic goals or weight loss, but for energy. The research is overwhelmingly clear. Regular movement enhances brain function, sharpens focus, and lifts mood. So I experimented. I didn't force myself into an intense gym schedule. I just moved more: morning walks, short home workouts, stretching between tasks. Slowly, my baseline energy rose. I wasn't crashing in the afternoons anymore. I wasn't glued to caffeine. I felt more capable, more alive. Then came nutrition. I used to eat for convenience. Whatever was fast, tasty, and filled me up. But the more I paid attention, the more I saw how food influenced my energy, mood, and even motivation. I started experimenting with different foods, tracking how I felt afterward. Some meals made me focused and clear headed, others left me sluggish. I didn't obsess over diets, I just became intentional. More real food, less ultra processed junk, more hydration, less sugar, and again, the shift was clear: better food, better energy, better productivity. I also had to deal with stress because chronic stress is an energy killer. I used to ignore stress signals, thinking they'd pass or that powering through was a badge of honor. But long term stress eats away at your mental clarity, your physical strength, and your emotional capacity. So I started building practices that helped regulate my stress levels: meditation, journaling, taking proper breaks, even simply closing my eyes for 5 minutes and breathing. These tiny actions became protective habits, allowing me to recharge instead of burnout. There's something else I discovered: the power of posture and movement during the workday. It sounds almost too simple, but how you sit, stand, and breathe affects your state of mind. I started switching between sitting and standing desks. I stretched regularly. I walked while taking phone calls. These small physical cues reminded my body that I wasn't stuck. Movement re energized me in ways I hadn't expected. Productivity isn't meant to be a sedentary, static activity, something that flows with the body. All of this led me to one core idea: power isn't something you magically summon with willpower. It's something you generate with your habits. It's not a switch you flip, it's a battery you charge. And once I saw it that way, everything changed. I stopped blaming myself when I couldn't focus or when my motivation dipped. Instead, I asked better questions. Did I sleep well? Have I moved today? What have I eaten? When did I last take a real break? Those questions became more useful than any productivity hack. Another important insight was understanding energy rhythms. We all have natural highs and lows during the day. For me, Late mornings tend to be my most focused time. Afternoons are slower, evenings spark creativity. I began aligning my most important work with my peak energy hours. Instead of fighting my rhythm, I worked with it. I stopped booking meetings in the mornings when I could be doing deep creative work. I used my slower afternoons for admin and lighter tasks, and just that small change massively boosted my output. Power is also about boundaries. Learning to say no to things that drain you is just as important as saying yes to things that energize you. I used to take on every request, join every meeting, and answer every message right away. But over time, that scattered my attention and left me feeling drained before I even got to the work that mattered. Now I'm far more selective. I batch communication. I protect my mornings. I take breaks without guilt because when I protect my energy, I protect my productivity. One of the most liberating realizations I had was that I don't need to feel motivated to be productive. I just need enough power to get started. Motivation is unreliable, but if I've slept well, moved my body, eaten intentionally, and given myself space to breathe, I can work even without feeling inspired. Energy makes action easier, and once I'm in motion, momentum usually takes care of the rest. We often think productivity is about squeezing more into the day, but real power comes from the opposite, doing less, but with more energy and focus. That's when work stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like flow. And that's the kind of productivity that lasts, not because we're grinding, but because we're energized, aligned, and fully alive. At the heart of all this is a simple truth. Your body is not a machine you can ignore. It's the power source for everything you do. If you want to get more done, not just once, but consistently, you need to take care of it. Sleep, move, eat well, breathe, rest. These aren't luxuries or signs of weakness. They're power tools. And the more you learn to use them, the more sustainable your productivity becomes. I used to chase hacks. Now I chase energy. Because once you have energy, everything else becomes easier. You can think clearly, create better, show up fully, and most importantly, you can keep going, not just for days or weeks, but for life. That's what real power looks like. And that's the foundation every other productivity strategy should be built on. Chapter 3: People. For most of my early career, I saw productivity as something solitary. It was me versus the task. My goals were personal, my systems were private, and I operated under the assumption that real work happened in isolation. The idea of involving others in my process felt inefficient, even risky. What if they slowed me down? What if they didn't get it? What if they distracted me? I thought the most effective way to be productive was to shut the door, plug in my headphones, and go to war with my to-do list. But over time, I began to notice a quiet truth. The times I felt most energized, most focused, and most creatively alive weren't when I was alone. They were when I was in good company. It didn't happen all at once. The shift was gradual. I started noticing how certain people had this strange ability to make me feel more capable. A 5-minute chat with a close friend could completely reframe a problem I'd been stuck on for hours. A voice note from someone who believed in me could spark a wave of motivation I couldn't manufacture on my own. Even just sitting in a room with someone else working on their own project would help me concentrate more. It made me realize that people don't just influence our emotions, they directly affect our energy, and with it, our productivity. We like to think of ourselves as logical, independent beings, but we are deeply social creatures. Our brains are wired for connection. And while we've created a modern world that often separates us in the name of efficiency, remote work, closed doors, silent study, solo hustle, the cost of isolation is high. Productivity doesn't thrive in a vacuum, it thrives in an ecosystem. And that ecosystem includes the people we let into our lives. There's plenty of research to support this. Studies in neuroscience and psychology show that social interaction boosts levels of oxytocin and dopamine, two chemicals that reduce stress and increase focus. In fact, strong social bonds are one of the most consistent predictors of long-term success, not just in work, but in health and well-being. People who feel supported and connected simply perform better. They're more resilient, more motivated, and more creative. And I saw this play out in my own life. When I started building a team for my YouTube channel and other creative projects, I thought I was delegating for the sake of saving time. But something unexpected happened. I started enjoying the work more. Brainstorming ideas became more exciting when I had someone to bounce them off. Reviewing scripts or editing content felt less tedious when I could share the process. And when something went wrong, as it often does, I didn't carry the stress alone. That sense of shared effort didn't just reduce the burden, it made the whole journey feel more meaningful. But it wasn't just about building a team, it was about rethinking how I approached every interaction in my life. I began treating relationships as a form of productivity infrastructure. I started asking, who gives me energy? Who drains it? Who challenges me in healthy ways? Who makes me feel like I can't be myself? These questions help me get clear on the difference between relationships that fuel growth and those that create friction. I didn't cut people off without thought, but I did become more intentional about where I invested my time and energy. One of the most powerful concepts I embraced was the idea that identity is shaped through community. We tend to think our values and habits are personal choices, but in reality, they're heavily influenced by our social circles. If you spend time around people who value deep work, you're more likely to do deep work. If your friends are excited about side projects, creativity, or self development, you'll find those interests becoming part of your normal too. On the flip side, if you're constantly surrounded by negativity, gossip, or low standards, that becomes your baseline. The people around you don't just influence what you do, they influence what you believe is possible. That's why I began actively curating my environment, not in a cold transactional way, but with care. I sought out friendships with people who inspired me, not because they were more successful, but because they were more alive. People who were curious, generous, excited about life. I started scheduling regular calls with them, creating small rituals like weekly check ins or co working sessions. These moments of connection weren't distractions from my productivity, they were fuel for it. They reminded me why I was doing the work in the first place. I also started practicing vulnerability. For a long time, I kept my struggles to myself. I thought being productive meant being strong, and being strong meant not showing weakness. But the more I opened up to people I trusted about stress, burnout, doubt, the more supported I felt. And in return, they felt safe to do the same. That mutual openness built deeper relationships and created a powerful emotional safety net. When you know you're not alone, you're far more willing to keep going. Even accountability changed for me. I used to think it was something rigid like having someone check your work every day, but I learned that real accountability is about care. When you know someone believes in you, truly wants you to succeed, you're more likely to follow through. Not out of pressure, but out of shared respect. Um, I started using this with friends and colleagues. We'd share our goals, not to judge each other, but to support and remind one another that we're capable. That kind of accountability is gentle but incredibly powerful. There's also something to be said about being around people who have fun. Productivity doesn't always need to be serious. Some of my most creative breakthroughs happened while laughing with friends, riffing on bad ideas, or turning a stressful task into a game. Playfulness in relationships breeds lightness, and lightness leads to energy. When we're relaxed, we think better, create better, and feel better. Surrounding yourself with people who can help you laugh when things feel heavy is one of the most underrated productivity strategies I know. At the same time, I had to set boundaries. There were people in my life who, consciously or not, pulled me off course. They didn't respect my time, belittled my efforts, or projected their insecurities onto me. Learning to recognize and step back from those dynamics wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Boundaries aren't about building walls, they're about protecting your focus, your self worth, and your energy. And once I got clear on that, I started building better relationships, not fewer. The final piece of the puzzle was recognizing that we're all walking each other home. No matter how ambitious, skilled, or independent we are, we're still human. We still need encouragement. We still need presence. We still need to be seen. And when we surround ourselves with people who bring out the best in us, not by pushing us, but by walking beside us, we become the kind of people who can do meaningful, lasting work. If I've learned anything about people and productivity, it's this: you don't have to do it all alone. In fact, you probably shouldn't. Let the right people in. Ask for help, offer help, build friendships that energize you. Be around people who remind you of your potential when you forget. Because in the end, no system, tool, or strategy will sustain you like a connection can. Productivity might start with you, but it grows with us. Part 2, Chapter 4, Clarity. There was a time when I found myself trapped in a cycle of busyness without progress. I would sit at my desk, open my laptop, and stare blankly at the screen, unsure where to begin. Every day felt like running on a treadmill, exerting effort but not moving forward. Despite long hours, I wasn't producing meaningful work. What was missing? Clarity. Without clarity, even the best intentions get lost in the noise of endless tasks and scattered focus. Clarity is the foundation of productivity. It's the difference between spinning your wheels and driving forward with purpose. When you know exactly what matters and why, decisions become easier, priorities fall into place, and momentum builds naturally. But without it, confusion reigns. Your mind becomes a cluttered room with too many unfinished projects, vague goals, and conflicting demands. This mental fog not only slows you down, it drains your energy and confidence. One of the first lessons I learned was how dangerous ambiguity is. When goals are unclear, your brain tries to fill the gap with anxiety. You don't know where to start, so you start everywhere and nowhere. The paradox of choice kicks in. Too many options lead to indecision. Instead of tackling the important, you get distracted by trivial tasks because they feel easier, safer, or more immediate. I remember struggling with this during my early content creation days. I had ideas for videos, articles, and projects, but no clear roadmap. Should I focus on one niche? Should I diversify? How many hours should I dedicate to each task? Without clear answers, I procrastinated under the guise of preparation. I was waiting for the perfect plan that never arrived. The result was frustration and stalled progress. Clarity starts with defining your why. Why are you doing what you do? What are you trying to achieve? When I began writing down my purpose clearly, to share knowledge and help people learn, I found it easier to decide what projects deserved my time. That purpose acted like a compass, guiding my choices and cutting through distractions. If something didn't align with that purpose, I gave myself permission to drop it. Next, I broke down my big goals into smaller, actionable steps. Vague ambitions like grow my channel became concrete targets like publish 2 videos per week or engage with audience comments daily. This step transformed overwhelm into manageable chunks. It also created a feedback loop. I could see progress, adjust my approach, and maintain focus. Another crucial part of gaining clarity was setting boundaries. I realized that saying yes to too many things diluted my energy and attention. It wasn't just about time management, it was about commitment management. Every commitment should serve a clear purpose. I started saying no more often, not out of selfishness, but to protect my focus. That boundary created mental space and reduced noise. Journaling became an invaluable tool for me. Spending 10 minutes each morning writing about my goals, challenges, and priorities helped me clear mental clutter. It forced me to articulate my thoughts and feelings, making vague concerns tangible and solvable. Over time, journaling revealed patterns, what drained me, what excited me, and where I was wasting energy. This awareness was key to making better decisions. Clarity also requires honest reflection. It's tempting to stay busy to avoid confronting uncomfortable questions like, is this project worth it? Or am I on the right path? But those questions are necessary. I learned to regularly audit my work and goals. If something didn't contribute to my larger vision or bring me satisfaction, I cut it loose. That ruthless pruning prevented burnout and freed up resources for what truly mattered. One of the most effective clarity tools I adopted was the priority list. Each day, I'd choose the top 3 tasks that mattered most, the big rocks. Everything else was secondary. This practice forced me to focus and avoid multitasking. Instead of chasing every email or notification, I tackled meaningful work first. It also helped combat perfectionism because I knew I only needed to finish those key tasks to make the day successful. Clarity isn't static, it's dynamic and evolving. As circumstances change, your goals and priorities must adapt. I set regular check-ins, weekly or monthly, to reassess my direction. Sometimes that meant shifting focus, other times it meant recommitting to existing goals with renewed purpose. These moments of recalibration prevented me from drifting aimlessly and ensured that my efforts stayed aligned with my evolving vision. Technology can either cloud or clarify. I used to get overwhelmed by endless apps and tools promising productivity miracles, but I learned that simplicity wins. I streamlined my digital workspace to only a few essential tools that supported clarity rather than distraction. Using a simple task manager and calendar helped me visualize my commitments and deadlines, reducing mental load. Clarity also means understanding your limits. Knowing when you're overwhelmed or overcommitted is vital. It's easy to push through fatigue or stress, but that only blurs your focus further. I began to listen to my body and mind signals. When I noticed I was losing clarity, I took breaks, adjusted workloads, or sought support. Recognizing that clarity requires rest was a game changer. Finally, clarity is about cutting through noise. We live in an age of constant information bombardment, emails, messages, news, social media. I realized that much of this noise was irrelevant to my goals. So I set filters, turning off non essential notifications, limiting social media use, and creating focused work periods. This reduced cognitive clutter and sharpened my attention. The journey to clarity is ongoing. It requires commitment to self awareness, intentional choices, and willingness to say no. But once you build that foundation, productivity becomes less about frantic effort and more about deliberate progress. You stop guessing and start knowing. You trade confusion for confidence. You move from reaction to creation. When clarity guides your work, procrastination fades because you know exactly what to do and why it matters. Overwhelm shrinks because you focus on what counts. And motivation flows naturally because your efforts align with your deeper purpose. That's the power of clarity. It frees you to work smarter, not harder, and makes productivity feel less like a grind and more like a meaningful journey. In the end, clarity is the key that unlocks all the other productivity strategies. Without it, systems fail, habits falter, and motivation wanes. But with it, you gain direction, focus, and confidence. You create space to move forward boldly. And that's how you unblock yourself, not by doing more, but by seeing clearly. Chapter 5: Courage, Conquering Fear. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that can halt progress, often without us even realizing it. It creeps into our minds as hesitation, self doubt, and avoidance. For a long time, I mistook fear for a signal to stop, a warning that I wasn't ready or that I should retreat. But over the years, I learned that fear isn't the enemy of productivity. It's an inevitable part of growth and creation. The challenge isn't to avoid fear, but to recognize it, understand it, and move forward despite it. Fear rarely stems from real, immediate danger. More often, it's built from imagined outcomes, worst case scenarios, and the stories we tell ourselves about failure and rejection. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not good enough? These fears tap into deep vulnerabilities, making them feel urgent and overwhelming. Left unchecked, they can stop us dead in our tracks, freezing us in indecision or driving us into procrastination. In the early stages of my career, fear often kept me on the sidelines. I had ideas and ambitions, but found myself hesitant to act. Every time I thought about publishing a video, sending an email, or launching a project, my mind flooded with what ifs. What if nobody likes it? What if I look foolish? What if I can't handle the feedback? This internal dialogue was exhausting and paralyzing. I waited for confidence to magically appear, but it never did. I had to learn a different way. The first major shift came when I stopped seeing fear as a stop sign and started seeing it as a compass. Fear points toward growth areas. It signals where we're stretching beyond our comfort zone. Instead of asking, how can I avoid fear? I began to ask, what is this fear trying to tell me? More often than not, it was revealing vulnerability, the fear of being seen imperfect or failing publicly. But vulnerability, I realized, is not weakness. It's the doorway to courage, connection, and creativity. Building courage became about small, consistent actions rather than grand, heroic leaps. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act anyway. Each time I posted a video, shared a piece of writing, or reached out despite my nerves, I built resilience. These micro courage moments rewired my relationship with fear. I saw that fear might always show up, but it didn't have to control me. Reframing failure was crucial in this process. Fear thrives on the myth that failure is catastrophic. I learned instead to see failure as feedback, a natural and necessary part of learning. When I stopped fearing mistakes and started viewing experiments as opportunities, the pressure lifted. I gave myself permission to be imperfect, to be curious, and to iterate. That shift was liberating and made the creative process far less intimidating. Support systems became invaluable in cultivating courage. Sharing my fears with trusted friends, mentors, or collaborators created a safe space to be vulnerable. Their encouragement reminded me I wasn't alone in feeling scared. Witnessing others face their fears inspired me. Courage became contagious. It's easier to move forward when you know others are walking the same path, struggling and succeeding alongside you. Preparation also played a key role. Fear often comes from uncertainty and feeling unprepared. The more I invested in research, planning, and practice, the more manageable the challenges became. Preparation didn't eliminate fear, but it lessened its intensity and gave me a sense of control. Confidence, I discovered, grows out of readiness as much as mindset. Mindfulness and self compassion helped me face fear with kindness rather than judgment. Instead of beating myself up for feeling afraid, I learned to acknowledge the emotion without letting it overwhelm me. Pausing to breathe, observing my thoughts without reacting, and reminding myself that fear is temporary enabled me to choose action over avoidance. Purpose became a powerful anchor when fear loomed. When my work aligned deeply with my values and goals, fear's grip loosened. The why behind my efforts became stronger than the what ifs. That sense of meaning motivated me to push forward, even when uncertainty was present. Sometimes courage required radical acceptance, embracing the reality that fear might never fully disappear, but deciding to act in spite of it. This acceptance was freeing. It lifted the burden of waiting for perfect confidence and gave me permission to be brave and imperfect right now. In practical terms, courage manifested in many small ways: clicking publish on shaky work, having difficult conversations, experimenting with new formats, or simply showing up on tough days. Courage wasn't always dramatic or heroic. It was often quiet persistence, the daily choice to lean into discomfort rather than retreat. Conquering fear didn't mean becoming fearless. I still feel nerves before big projects or presentations, but now I know fear signals growth. Growth demands stepping into the unknown. The more I practice courage, the more my confidence grows, not because fear disappears, but because I learn to keep moving despite it. At its core, courage is a skill, something you develop through practice, support, and perspective. Leaning into fear unlocks resilience and potential. Fear shifts from a prison into a gateway. Ultimately, productivity isn't only about managing tasks or time, it's about mastering your relationship with fear. Having the courage to start, fail, learn, and persist breaks down the blocks that once felt insurmountable. That's the heart of unblocking, transforming fear from a roadblock into a stepping stone. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else, your purpose, your vision, your work, is more important. And that something else is why you keep going. Chapter 6: Start or Inertia. Tackling the hardest first step. Starting is by far the hardest part of any task or project. The invisible force that keeps us from beginning is inertia, our brain's natural tendency to resist change and prefer things to stay as they are. It's like trying to push a giant boulder that's at rest. The first nudge requires the most effort. Once it starts rolling, momentum carries it forward more easily. In productivity, inertia is the silent enemy that often stops us before we even begin. I've experienced this struggle countless times. Sitting at my desk, staring at a blank screen or an overwhelming to-do list, feeling paralyzed by the weight of what needs to be done. The longer I delay starting, the larger the task seems, and the more energy it takes to break free from the stuck feeling. It's a vicious cycle. The paradox is simple yet profound. Starting is hard, but once you do, the rest flows with far less resistance. The hardest first step feels like climbing a mountain because it's filled with uncertainty. We don't know exactly how to do it, how long it will take, or what obstacles might appear along the way. This fear of the unknown feeds procrastination and avoidance. It's tempting to distract ourselves with smaller, easier tasks that feel productive, checking emails, organizing our desk, scrolling social media, but these are just busy work. They give the illusion of progress, but keep us from moving forward on what actually matters. One of the most effective ways I learned to overcome this was by breaking the first step into ridiculously small pieces. Instead of saying to myself, I need to write this entire report, I'd break it down into micro steps. I will open a new document. Then I will write a title. Then I will jot down 3 ideas. These tiny, low pressure actions take away the overwhelming feeling and lower the barrier to start. Opening a document feels manageable, even trivial, and yet it's a meaningful push against inertia. Embracing imperfection from the very beginning also made a huge difference. I used to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect plan before starting, but that was an excuse to avoid discomfort. Waiting for everything to be just right guarantees you'll never begin. I learned to accept that the first draft, the initial attempt, would be messy, incomplete, or awkward, and that's perfectly okay. Progress doesn't require perfection, it requires starting. Starting imperfectly means you give yourself room to iterate and improve over time. Rituals became another powerful tool to battle inertia. For instance, setting a timer for just 5 minutes and committing to work only for that short burst. This micro commitment makes starting less intimidating because it doesn't feel like a huge demand on your time or energy. Often, once those 5 minutes are up, I felt motivated to keep going. The act of beginning, any beginning, is itself a breakthrough. Accountability also played a key role. When I told friends, colleagues, or online communities about my intention to start a project by a certain time, I created external pressure that motivated me. Knowing someone else was aware of my goal made it harder to hide behind excuses. This external nudge helped me move beyond inertia many times when internal motivation was weak. Changing my environment helped too. A cluttered, noisy, or distracting space amplifies resistance to starting. I experimented with creating a dedicated workspace free from distractions. Sometimes, even just moving from the couch to a desk or going to a cafe shifted my mindset. Environmental cues signal to our brain that it's time to focus, lowering the psychological barrier to begin. Mindset was the most important element. Instead of framing the start as a chore, I have to do this, I reframed it as a choice. I get to start this. This shift from obligation to opportunity made a surprising difference. Starting felt less like a burden and more like an exciting step towards something meaningful. It reminded me that beginning is an act of empowerment, not punishment. I learned to separate starting from finishing. Too often, we sabotage ourselves by thinking, if I can't finish this now, I shouldn't start at all. This all or nothing thinking paralyzes action. But starting is just about creating motion, not completing the entire task. Giving myself permission to begin without pressure to finish immediately eased anxiety and lowered resistance. Inevitably, some days inertia felt overwhelming, despite all strategies. On those days, I reminded myself that even the smallest action counts. 5 minutes of progress is better than none. Showing up consistently, even imperfectly, builds momentum over time. Productivity is a marathon, not a sprint, and overcoming inertia is about building sustainable habits, not heroic bursts. One insight that changed everything was realizing that starting unlocks hidden energy. Before action, the task feels heavy and intimidating. Once started, my brain shifts gears, from resistance to engagement. Ideas flow more easily, focus sharpens, and motivation strengthens. The first step transforms the task from an abstract challenge into manageable, concrete actions. Kindness toward myself was critical in this journey. Inertia is universal, and struggling to start does not mean failure or laziness. Recognizing this helped reduce self-criticism and shame. Instead of harsh judgments, I treated myself like a friend facing the same challenge. That compassion made it easier to show up again and again. Technology can either help or hinder starting. I used to get overwhelmed by complicated tools and apps which added friction rather than reducing it. Simplifying my digital environment to a few essential tools made starting smoother. Using a simple task manager, calendar, or timer helps visualize commitments and deadlines without causing overwhelm. The hardest first step is also about confronting fear, the fear of failure, judgment, or imperfection. When you commit to starting despite these fears, you build courage and resilience. Each time you push past inertia, you prove to yourself that fear isn't a prison, but a threshold to cross. In practical terms, here's a summary of what works best. Break the first step into tiny, manageable chunks. Set low-pressure micro goals like working for 5 minutes. Embrace imperfection and allow messy beginnings. Use rituals and environmental cues to signal starting. Create accountability by sharing intentions with others. Reframe mindset from obligation to opportunity. Separate starting from finishing. Practice kindness and self compassion. Simplify tools and reduce distractions. Recognize starting as a way to build courage. In the end, productivity is less about waiting for motivation or perfect conditions and more about showing up and starting despite discomfort. The hardest part is always that first push against inertia. But once you break through, momentum builds and the path becomes clearer. Starting isn't just an action, it's a declaration that you are ready to move forward. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That step is yours to take. No matter how small or imperfect, it counts because once you start, you're already ahead. Part 3, Chapter 7, Conserve, Managing Overexertion. In the rush to get things done, most of us make the same mistake. We push too hard for too long. We treat productivity like a sprint instead of a marathon. The truth is, overexertion is a silent productivity killer. It drains your energy, clouds your focus, and eventually leads to burnout. I've been guilty of this more times than I can count, working long hours, skipping breaks, ignoring signs of fatigue, all in the name of getting ahead. But pushing beyond your limits without care is counterproductive. You may move fast for a while, but eventually your body and mind hit a wall, and progress screeches to a halt. Conserving your energy is as critical as managing your time. It means knowing when to push and when to pull back, listening to your body's signals, and respecting your limits. It's about working smarter, not harder, and creating sustainable rhythms that support long-term productivity and well-being. Early in my career, I often ignored these signals. I thought being busy all the time was a badge of honor and that any rest was wasted time. The harder I worked, the more I believed I was proving my dedication. But that mindset led to exhaustion and declining results. I learned the hard way that overexertion reduces both quality and creativity. When you're drained, your decisions become sloppy, your focus fragments, and motivation dwindles. Conservation starts with awareness. You have to know your energy patterns and rhythms throughout the day. I began tracking when I felt most alert and productive versus when I was sluggish or distracted. For me, mornings tend to be my sharpest hours, while afternoons are better suited for lighter tasks. Aligning demanding work with your peak energy times means you can conserve energy and avoid forcing yourself through tasks when you're naturally low. Rest and recovery aren't optional, they are essential components of productivity. Taking regular breaks, getting enough sleep, and allowing mental downtime recharge your cognitive resources. I used to underestimate the power of rest, thinking it was wasted time, but it's actually an investment. When I started prioritizing sleep and breaks, my creativity soared and my focus improved. It's not about working more hours, it's about working better hours. Saying no is a vital conservation skill. Overcommitting stretches your resources thin and sets you up for burnout. I had to learn to say no to projects, meetings, and tasks that didn't align with my priorities or drained me unnecessarily. Protecting your energy by setting boundaries preserves your capacity for what truly matters. Another key to conserving energy is managing distractions and interruptions. Constant context switching is exhausting. I created blocks of focused work time where I minimized interruptions, turning off notifications, closing unnecessary tabs, and setting clear boundaries with colleagues or family. These focused periods let me dive deep into work without wasting energy on task switching. Conservation also means pacing yourself. Instead of grinding nonstop, I learned to work in sustainable bursts, alternating intense focus with rest. Techniques like the Pomodoro method, working for 25 minutes, then resting for 5, help me maintain steady energy. These cycles respect your natural attention span and prevent burnout. Physical health plays a foundational role in energy management. Regular movement, hydration, and nutrition support brain function and stamina. When I ignored these basics, my energy plummeted. Incorporating simple habits like stretching, drinking water, and balanced meals made a huge difference in how much I could sustain focus throughout the day. Mental boundaries are just as important. Overthinking, rumination, and worry drain your mental energy. I learned mindfulness and meditation practices to calm my mind and reduce stress. These tools help conserve mental resources by creating space and clarity, preventing energy leaks from anxiety and overthinking. Conservation requires you to monitor your progress without punishing yourself. When fatigue sets in, it's not a failure, it's a signal to adjust. I learned to be kind to myself and flexible in my plans. Sometimes the best way forward is to rest and recharge, not push harder. Technology can either help or hinder energy conservation. I used to be a slave to my devices, responding instantly to every ping. Now, I use technology intentionally, batching communications, scheduling deep work, and using apps that support focus rather than distract. Technology should serve your energy, not consume it. Sustainability also involves long term planning. Short bursts of extreme productivity are unsustainable. I learned to pace big projects over weeks or months, building consistent habits rather than relying on adrenaline fueled sprints. This steady approach prevents burnout and leads to more reliable outcomes. At its core, conserving energy is about respect for your body, mind, and limits. It's about recognizing that you are a finite resource, not an endless machine. Productivity thrives not in frantic busyness, but in balanced, intentional effort. When you master conservation, your work improves in quality and enjoyment. You feel more present, creative, and capable. You build resilience against stress and avoid the crashes that derail progress. In the end, productivity isn't just about doing more, it's about doing what matters while preserving your capacity to keep going. Managing overexertion is the key to sustainable success. The smartest work happens when you conserve your energy, honor your limits, tear, and create a rhythm that supports your best self every day. Chapter 8: Recharge, Addressing Depletion. Depletion is a state every driven person encounters at some point, when the fuel gauge of your physical, mental, and emotional energy hits empty, and no amount of willpower can push you forward. I've faced it repeatedly in my journey, and at first I thought the answer was to keep grinding harder. But pushing through depletion only deepens the crash that follows. The real power lies in learning how to recharge, not as a luxury, but as a vital part of sustained productivity. Recharging means refilling your energy reserves before they run dry, so you can return to your work clear headed, motivated, and capable. It's not just about taking breaks, it's a deliberate, holistic process that restores your whole system. Without this, productivity becomes a roller coaster of intense bursts followed by inevitable crashes, leaving you exhausted and frustrated. The hardest part is often recognizing the signs of depletion. These signs aren't always obvious, sometimes it's subtle. A creeping fog in your thoughts, irritability over small things, difficulty concentrating, or a sense of overwhelm. Other times, it's physical: headaches, muscle tension, restless sleep, or chronic fatigue. Early in my career, I ignored these signals, thinking I could power through. That mindset cost me in burnout, poor decisions, and lost time. Over time, I learned that acknowledging depletion early is a form of self awareness that prevents deeper damage. Physical rest is the cornerstone of effective recharge. Quality sleep stands above all else. For years, I sacrificed sleep for late nights, believing that working longer hours meant getting more done. In reality, I was sabotaging my productivity. Sleep doesn't just make you feel rested, it's a biological reset button. It clears toxins from the brain, strengthens memory, and restores focus and creativity. Once I committed to consistent sleep schedules, I noticed my energy stabilized and my mental clarity sharpened, even on busy days. But rest is more than just sleep. Intentional downtime, periods where your body and mind slow down, is crucial. I found that even short, mindful breaks during the day, like a walk outside, light stretching, or simply sitting quietly away from screens, allowed my nervous system to reset. These moments help reduce the chronic tension and stress that build up when we're constantly on. Mindfulness practices, such as meditation or deep breathing exercises, became tools I used to recharge faster and more deeply. Mental recharge requires stepping away from work tasks mentally, not just physically. The modern world bombards us with endless information and demands on our attention, which drains cognitive resources. To combat this, I deliberately engaged in hobbies and activities unrelated to work. Reading fiction, playing music, cooking, or gardening provided refreshing mental breaks. These activities broke the monotony and allowed my mind to wander and rest, sparking creativity in ways focused work couldn't. Surprisingly, social connection is also a powerful form of recharge. Positive interactions with friends, family, or even colleagues provide emotional energy. Isolation or toxic relationships, on the other hand, drain it. I learned to prioritize meaningful conversations and shared experiences, which lifted my mood and renewed my motivation. Social support became a buffer against burnout and a source of inspiration. Creative recharge is equally essential. When I felt stuck or depleted, I consciously sought new inputs: art, music, nature, or learning something unfamiliar. These sources of inspiration broke me out of mental ruts and refreshed my enthusiasm. Recharge isn't always about rest. Sometimes it's about refueling your creative well. Technology, while indispensable, can either help or hinder recharge. I used to be tethered to my devices, responding instantly to every notification, which fragmented my focus and added to mental exhaustion. Now, I use technology intentionally, setting boundaries on screen time, especially before bed, and using apps that promote calm rather than distraction improve my ability to recharge. Reducing digital noise help my brain settle and recover more fully. Nutrition and hydration are often overlooked, but foundational for recharging. Our bodies need fuel that sustains steady energy, not just quick spikes. Eating balanced meals rich in whole foods and drinking enough water consistently supported my stamina and cognitive function. When I neglected these basics, fatigue hit harder and recovery took longer. Another important aspect of recharge is adjusting your expectations. Sometimes the hardest part is accepting that you're depleted and need to slow down. Pushing harder when you're exhausted isn't heroic, it's self sabotage. Learning to honor your limits and adapt plans without guilt was liberating. It prevented burnout and allowed me to come back stronger. Planning regular recharge periods is crucial to avoid depletion spiraling out of control. I established routines like weekly digital detoxes, daily wind down rituals, and scheduled vacations. These built in pauses create rhythm and sustainability in my workflow. Recharge becomes a habit, not an afterthought. Effective recharge also involves monitoring your energy without self judgment. When fatigue hits, it's not a personal failure, it's a biological reality and a signal to act. Responding with kindness rather than criticism helps you recover faster and stay motivated. Self compassion became a cornerstone of my recharge practice. Physical movement supports recharge too. When depleted, it's tempting to lie still or remain sedentary, yet gentle exercise, walking, yoga, stretching, increases blood flow, reduces tension, and boosts mood. Incorporating movement into my daily routine enhanced both my physical and mental recharge. Emotional recharge often requires addressing sources of stress or unresolved feelings. I found journaling, therapy, or talking openly about challenges to be powerful ways to process emotions and free up mental space. Carrying emotional baggage saps energy and focus, so dealing with it directly is essential for true recharge. Recharge is not a one size fits all formula. It's deeply personal and evolves with your circumstances. The key is to experiment with different strategies: sleep routines, breaks, social time, creative pursuits, and observe what restores you best. Over time, you develop a toolbox of recharge habits tailored to your unique needs. At its heart, recharge is about honoring yourself as a whole person, not just a productivity machine. It's an act of respect for your body, mind, and spirit. When you learn to recharge effectively, you escape the cycle of burnout and fatigue. You build resilience that lets you sustain high quality work over the long haul. In practice, recharging transforms productivity from a stressful grind into a fulfilling flow. It allows you to engage deeply with your work without sacrificing your well being. Recharge isn't a pause from productivity, it's the foundation that makes true productivity possible. To summarize, addressing depletion through recharge requires recognizing early signs of physical and mental fatigue, prioritizing quality sleep and intentional rest, taking mindful breaks that slow down your nervous system, engaging in non work hobbies to refresh the mind, nurturing social connections for emotional energy, seeking inspiration to fuel creativity, using technology mindfully to reduce digital overload, eating nourishing food and staying hydrated, practicing self compassion and adjusting expectations, scheduling regular recharge routines, incorporating physical movement and emotional processing. Recharge is not optional, it's essential. When you commit to it, you unlock a sustainable, energized approach to your work and life. You transform depletion from a barrier into a signal guiding you toward balance and renewal. In mastering recharge, you don't just survive, you thrive. Chapter 9: Align, avoiding misalignment with purpose. Productivity without purpose is one of the biggest traps I've fallen into, and countless others have too. It's like stepping on the gas pedal of a car without knowing where you're headed. You might be moving fast, but there's no guarantee you're going in the right direction. Misalignment with purpose causes wasted effort, exhaustion, and deep dissatisfaction. I've learned that true productivity isn't just about doing more. It's about doing what actually matters, what connects with your core values and bigger goals. Early in my career, I mistook activity for achievement. I filled my days with busy work, urgent tasks, and distractions, all the while losing sight of why I was doing it. The result was burnout, frustration, and a nagging feeling that despite all the effort, something was missing. I was productive, but unfulfilled. Alignment starts with clarity about your purpose, the why behind your work. Purpose is the anchor that keeps you grounded amid chaos and distraction. It answers the question, what meaningful impact do I want to make? What drives me beyond money, status, or approval? These questions aren't easy to answer and they require honest self reflection. For me, this clarity came from peeling back layers of external expectations and reconnecting with what genuinely excites and motivates me. Once you identify your purpose, the next challenge is to align your daily actions with it. This means constantly asking, does this task, project, or meeting move me closer to my purpose? If not, it might be a distraction or misalignment. This question became a powerful filter for my to-do list and commitments. Tasks that didn't align got delegated, postponed, or eliminated altogether. It freed up space for what truly mattered. One of the hardest lessons I learned was saying no. It sounds simple, but saying no to people, requests, or opportunities that don't align with your purpose can be incredibly difficult. Early on, I felt guilty or worried about missing out, but saying yes to everything scattered my energy and pulled me away from my core goals. Saying no became a way of protecting my time and focus. It's not about being rigid or closed minded, it's about intentional prioritization. Alignment also extends beyond tasks to the people and environments around you. Toxic relationships, unsupportive teams, or misaligned company cultures drain your energy and cloud your judgment. I found that seeking out communities, mentors, and collaborators who shared my values fueled my motivation and creativity. Being around people who understood and supported my purpose created a positive feedback loop that made alignment easier and more natural. Sometimes misalignment manifests as internal conflict when your actions contradict your beliefs or values. This dissonance can create stress, burnout, and dissatisfaction. I faced moments when I realized my goals or methods no longer fit who I was becoming. Addressing this required courage to reassess and adjust. Alignment isn't a fixed destination, it's an ongoing journey. It demands flexibility, self awareness, and honesty. To maintain alignment, I developed rituals and tools that kept my purpose visible. Writing mission statements, creating vision boards, and regular journaling became anchors that reminded me why I do the work I do. These practices help counteract the daily grind's tendency to bury purpose under endless tasks. When your work aligns with your purpose, motivation shifts from external pressure to internal drive. The energy comes not from deadlines or rewards, but from deep personal meaning. This intrinsic motivation makes the effort feel lighter and focus sharper. Challenges become opportunities to grow rather than obstacles to endure. Creativity and flow emerge naturally in this space. Alignment is also a powerful shield against burnout. When your work resonates with your values, you're more likely to set healthy boundaries and practice self-care. It's easier to say no to distractions and yes to rest because these choices support your larger mission. Alignment creates a sustainable cycle where energy and effort feed into meaningful progress rather than depletion. The impact of alignment extends beyond individual productivity. When you work in harmony with your purpose, you contribute in ways that matter, not just to yourself, but to others. Purpose-driven productivity creates ripple effects, better work quality, stronger relationships, and a sense of fulfillment that inspires further action. In practice, here's how to cultivate and maintain alignment. 1. Clarify your purpose. Take time to reflect deeply on what drives you beyond surface goals. Ask yourself why your work matters, what legacy you want to leave, and what values guide your decisions. 2. Regularly review your actions. Use your purpose as a filter for daily tasks and projects. Ask if they truly move you toward your meaningful goals. Adjust or eliminate what doesn't fit. 3. Learn to say no. Protect your time and energy by declining requests and opportunities that don't align with your core mission. Set clear boundaries without guilt. 4. Surround yourself with support. Seek people and environments that resonate with your values. Positive relationships fuel motivation and help keep your purpose alive. 5. Address internal conflicts. Notice when your actions don't match your beliefs and be willing to reassess your goals or methods. Alignment is an evolving process. 6. Use reminders and rituals. Keep your purpose visible through vision boards, mission statements, journaling, or regular reflection. These tools help maintain focus. 7. Shift motivation from external to internal. Cultivate intrinsic motivation by connecting deeply with your purpose. Let meaning guide your effort instead of pressure or rewards. 8. Set boundaries and practice self-care. Alignment helps you protect your energy by encouraging rest and balance. Recognize that sustainability requires tending to yourself. Avoiding misalignment is not about perfection or rigidity. It's about conscious, ongoing choice. It means steering your energy toward what truly matters and letting go of distractions that dilute your impact. When you align your work with your purpose, productivity becomes a source of joy and fulfillment instead of stress and exhaustion. Ultimately, alignment is the foundation of meaningful productivity. Without it, no amount of effort will bring lasting satisfaction or impact. With alignment, you unlock your fullest potential, working smarter with heart and clarity guiding every step. Purpose-driven productivity isn't just about getting things done. It's about getting the right things done in a way that feeds your soul and fuels your journey. Why these matter. Productivity is not simply about crossing items off a to-do list or clocking endless hours of work. It's a deeply human process that requires managing more than just time. It demands managing energy, mindset, and meaning. Without addressing these fundamental aspects, your productivity efforts remain shallow, unsustainable, or frustratingly inconsistent. The three pillars of productivity, energize, unblock, and sustain, matter because they target these critical underlying forces that determine whether you'll make progress, get stuck, or burn out. Energize activates your productivity by fueling your capacity to engage and perform. It's the source of vitality that lets you show up with enthusiasm, focus, and creativity. Without this energy, even the clearest goals feel like mountains and motivation slips away. When your body and mind are energized, work becomes less of a grind and more of an opportunity. This state arises naturally when you nurture joy and curiosity, maintain physical and mental strength, and connect meaningfully with others. Energy isn't a fixed resource. It can be cultivated and replenished. When you pay attention to how you play, how you care for your power, and how you engage with people, you tap into the wellspring of sustainable productivity. This is why activating energy is the first and most crucial step to getting things done well and consistently. Unblock removes the invisible barriers that stop us from starting or continuing important work. These barriers often disguise themselves as uncertainty, fear, or inertia, and they silently sabotage your productivity even when you want to move forward. Procrastination is rarely about laziness. It's usually about a lack of clarity, an emotional block, or feeling overwhelmed. By seeking clarity, you transform vague ideas into concrete, manageable actions, cutting through confusion and indecision. By cultivating courage, you face the fears of failure, judgment, or the unknown that freeze your progress. And by focusing on simply starting, you overcome the heavy inertia that keeps you stuck in place. Removing these blocks isn't a one-time fix, but a continuous process. Each small breakthrough builds momentum, rewiring your brain to act rather than avoid. This pillar matters because without clearing these barriers, even the best energy and intentions won't translate into real progress. Sustain ensures that your productivity isn't a short sprint followed by collapse, but a balanced, purposeful journey over time. It's about protecting your energy reserves so you can keep going without burning out. Sustaining productivity means conserving your strength by pacing yourself, setting boundaries, and avoiding unnecessary exhaustion. It means regularly recharging, restoring your physical, mental, and emotional resources so you return to your work fresh and focused. And it means aligning your daily actions with your deeper purpose and values so your effort feels meaningful and motivates you from within. Without sustain, the cycle of overwork and depletion repeats, leading to frustration and eventual breakdown. By focusing on long term balance and connection to purpose, sustain transforms productivity from a demanding chore into a fulfilling practice. This pillar matters because it safeguards your well being and ensures that your productivity is both effective and deeply rewarding. Together, these pillars form a holistic approach that recognizes productivity as a dynamic interaction between your energy, mindset, and meaning. They matter because they address the real reasons you succeed or struggle, why you start or stall, why you thrive or burn out. Energize fuels your ability to act. Unblock clears the path so you can move. Sustain keeps you on course without losing yourself. Ignoring any one of these leaves productivity vulnerable to collapse or frustration. In essence, these pillars are not separate steps, but intertwined forces that shape your experience every day. They invite you to work with your nature, not against it, by honoring your needs for vitality, courage, clarity, and purpose. When you embrace energize, unblock, and sustain, productivity becomes more than output. It becomes a balanced, energizing, and meaningful way of living. This is why these matter, because they unlock your true capacity to create, grow, and succeed sustainably.